Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of She Leads, the inspiring women of Ludhiana in the food business series. Today, I'm honored to be sharing the screen with Ms. Garima Agarwal, chef and owner of the niche patisserie, The Sweet Life. Driven by her love for cuisine and the pastry arts, she started her very own cloud kitchen in 2010. The Sweet Life rapidly became a local favorite. TSL is now known for its elaborate custom cakes, gifting, orders, and festive menu. My relationship with Garima goes way back. When I was 8 years old and I first picked up a whisk to bake, it was her that I wanted to learn from. It was her passion and enthusiastic perfectionism that inspired me the most. So without further ado, to help our audience know more about you, I would like to ask you about your educational background.
Firstly, thank you for having me. I'm very honored. So there was a lot of focus on education in my family. My mother is a doctor. My father is an engineer. I did my BCA before I got married, and I actually did my master's in information technology after getting married.
But now you're a baker, right? So how did you get into the world of baking?
So I think life takes you where it has to. So I got introduced to Vedanta and Swami Parthasarathy through my husband's family, and I got very involved in Vedanta, and I used to hear a lot of Swamiji's lectures, and I used to go to the Vedanta Academy, and he always says you should do what you love doing, like that is your sadharma, and you will excel in what you like doing. So I had dabbled in a couple of things, but nothing that really took my, like, I wanted to do something but I didn't know what to do. So when I heard him, I think like something just clicked in place, and I was like, yes, this is what I love doing. This is what I'm going to pursue. This is what I'm going to do professionally.
And did you also bake before?
Yes, I used to bake all the time. I think I still remember I baked my first cake when I was 8 and my brother was 10, both of us together, without any adult supervision. So I've always loved baking. I've always loved going through recipe books. My mother used to bake in her free time. I think that was probably therapeutic for her. So I picked it up. I picked up a lot of cooking and baking from her. So yeah, I think I feel it's my Swadharma.
Okay. And then, so you decided that you were going to follow your passion, that is baking. So what were the first or initial things that you decided to help you pursue this?
So everyone told me, oh, you're so good at it, you make these cakes nicely. Why don't you just start making a couple of cakes, put a menu out there and people will order, and then we can see how to take it from there. Like, let's take baby steps.
Right.
But I was very sure that, I wanted to do it properly. I want to, learn properly and then take it further. And I have been so blessed and so lucky. I have the nicest in-laws, and they were so supportive. They understood my dream of doing this, and they sent me to Paris to study. So I went to Le Cordon Bleu, Paris, and I think that was a game changer. Yeah, so I did that for a couple of months. Then I came back, did an internship in India. Then I went to the US again to do a course on cake decorating, and then another internship. So yeah, that was, so this is all before I started The Sweet Life.
Okay. And I heard you also learned French before you went.
Yes, yeah, because, Paris, new city, everything is in French. Even though the course is conducted in French, there are always English translators. The chefs speak French, but there are always English translators. Right. But to live in a city for some time, to be able to read the signs, again, if you want to do something, do it properly, do it well.
Right.
So yeah, so I learned French, and it was something I always wanted to do. So I think it was like I think it had to all come together.
Okay. And so you did your internships, you did a course in the US, you went to Le Cordon Bleu in Paris. So what were your main takeaways from all of this? Your experience, what did it look like?
So Le Cordon Bleu, I did an intensive version where you literally have 9 hours of class every day, a class, a demo, a practical, a demo, or a practical, demo, practical, and they literally throw you in the deep end. So what I learned was, when the push comes to the shove, you do it. They show you puff pastry, which is something so technical, something so difficult, and you're just expected to replicate it. So that was such a good learning experience for me that yes, if someone just trusts you enough in a way that yes, you can do this, why can't you do this?
Right.
Right? So I think that was a very, very big takeaway. if anything, if you ask me now, do I use any of the recipes or techniques that was taught in pastry school? Actually, maybe 5% of what I learned in pastry school. I don't use any of that. But just the whole experience and the confidence that it gave me, that was, I think, my biggest takeaway from culinary school.
And from your internships?
So internships, when I came back, we use the culinary schools use the best of ingredients. They use the best chocolate, the dry butter, the pistachios, the dry fruit, everything. And obviously, this is 2009. I went to Le Cordon Bleu in 2009. Nothing was available in India. So I wanted to get a feel of what is available, what are people using, what is the pastry scene in India. But of course, the limitation, being in a small town. So all I did was I worked in Park Plaza, Ludhiana for 3 months, interned there. And all I did was break eggs. Like I could literally break eggs with one hand because I used to break some 200, 300 eggs every day. And, did small menial tasks. And I then did 1 month in Radisson Jalandhar, where I used to beg the chefs, because the chef's assistants, there's a hierarchy. Please let me ice a cake. Please let me ice a cake.
Right.
So then that's how I learned, because I would keep icing cakes, and obviously their time gets wasted, right? Because you're kind of doing it more slowly. But yes, that's how I kind of learned. What was my takeaway from my internship was also a lot of things that I didn't want to do.
Yes.
Because I understand they're commercial kitchens, they're catering to a very wide audience, but I don't want to do that. It made me realize where I want to place myself. I want to be a niche, and I want to do a different kind of menu.
And you want to focus on your ingredients and having the best of them as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you decided to start the Sweet Life after your internships and the work experience that you had. So what was the initial financial investment that you put into your business?
Okay, so I got a loan of 1.5 lakhs from my father. And what I spent it on was, first I did a sugar crafting course, because Le Cordon Bleu or the US course I did in the US didn't have any sugar crafting. I was very fascinated with sugar flours always. Okay, then I bought a whole lot of recipe books. Then I took up a stall in an exhibition the only 3 times that I've exhibited has been with Divya Dhanda. She has the best exhibition. So I took a stall in an exhibition to tell people that this is what I'm doing, that kind of thing. And I think I bought a small oven. It wasn't even something big, just a 30-liter home oven. And maybe, I don't even remember if I bought a fridge, nothing. I think a KitchenAid that time. My husband was traveling to England and he got a KitchenAid for me, which was for 20,000 rupees that time.
Okay.
So that's it.
Right. And then you've never put in money?
I think that everything that has come, I've been lucky that everything has come from TSL profits, all the money that has come. So I still remember before I was to start the exhibition, I had sent some samples across to someone. Even before my exhibition, I got an order for 50 boxes. On the day of my exhibition, I got an order for another 30-40 boxes. And within, I think, 2 weeks, and people who tasted those boxes, someone tasted something. Within 2 weeks, I got a wedding order of 150 boxes. And the advance that I got from that order is what I used to buy my commercial big oven, which I use till date.
Okay, so your initial response was overwhelming than what you thought it to be.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to be that great. Yeah, it was overwhelming for sure.
So you've been lucky and talented and skilled. All 3 of the things you've done.
I think I've been very blessed.
Yes. So how did you conceptualize your menu and brand? Because it was just you in the start.
So my brand imaging, I had just come back from France and I was very influenced by French patisseries. My own personal aesthetic is also very pastel, very vintage, very floral, and especially by Lardre. I loved all their Baroque elements. And in fact, the mistake that I did, which I didn't know any better at that time, was I literally copied their logo and wreath, pretty much a version of that, which I wouldn't do now. And actually, this is the advice I would give to anyone starting a new brand is, I didn't know any better that one should have their brand language, brand design, everything in place. Maybe have a professional do it for you. Of course, it has to reflect your aesthetics and your personality, because that's going to come through later. But definitely have someone on board to guide you with all of that.
And something originally.
Yeah, exactly. So I have actually changed my logo 3 times, and now what I have was created especially for me, and I love that because it was with all the elements that I like. So I think that's important. But initially, I just got a few boxes made. Very basic, very simple, nothing big, no investment, nothing. It was all from TSL profits.
Okay, and how did you come up with the name, The Sweet Life?
So I wanted to have something which reflected, like a philosophical aspect, like something about Vedanta. And you know how you say you have a good life and life is good and things like that. And I wanted to obviously show that it is a pastry brand. So that's how I really thought about the name quite a bit, and I named it The Sweet Life. But honestly, now, today, if you ask me if I were to redo it again, I probably wouldn't name it The Sweet Life. I'd probably give it a more unique name, because there's so many names which sound so similar. So it's not something that kind of stands out from the crowd.
Right. And how far do you think that your social circle helped you when you initially kickstarted your business?
So I have been asked this earlier, and sometimes also from a place of envy, like, oh, she's successful because she is from a certain straight house society or things like that. I think it helps you, of course, because that's how people come to know about you, but it helps you get that first order, maybe a second order. But beyond that, nobody is going to give their hard-earned money just because you know them socially. Right? So I think for me, it's literally, I say, it's been taste of mouth. It's not been word of mouth, it's been taste of mouth. People have eaten my cake somewhere, they have ordered it. Today, when people come to me, I think maybe 70 to 80% of the people that order from me today, the new clients, they come to me with a flavor in mind. Means they have eaten that somewhere. Like, they don't ask me, please suggest a flavor. They say, I want the chocolate almond praline. I want this. So I know that they've eaten it somewhere, or they send me a forwarded message because they've asked the person, like, we like the cake at your parties, what flavor was it? So yeah, I think the social circle for your first and second order, but beyond that, no. And now I think my client base is so huge that my personal social circle would be probably 5%, max 10% of all my clients.
Okay. So it's your cakes, and when people taste them, that's what helps your business go on.
I think any business, if people feel they're only going to spend their money if they feel you're good at it.
And now with the generations changing so fast and people becoming increasingly digital and looking for social media when they're ordering something, so how do you use your social media presence to properly market your products and bring them to your audience?
Oh, social media has been a game changer. I think it's been such a huge asset for my business. So initially, I just had a Facebook page. I think Facebook was big at that time, and that also not active at all. I didn't realize the importance that time probably. It was only in 2015 that I started my Instagram page. I have pretty much handled it myself for 8 years. It's only now that I have a social media manager, but it's been a game changer because you can display it works as a catalog for my products. It showcases what I do. It's very we have thousands of cake pictures. Okay, I think I have more than 1,500 posts plus so many pictures in the highlights. So it's very easy when you look at someone's page. That's what we do, right? Even as clients, when we look at someone's page, iska kaam chalta hai. That's the impression. You can see a page and you come to know where the person is at. So I think that's been huge. And even in terms of, if you want to do instant sales, if you want to do new festive menus, everything, you just put it on social media. I think it's a very effective way of marketing.
Right, and it's basically like a menu of yours because people go there and they see cakes they like and they order that from you.
Yeah.
They get inspiration from the designs they want.
Yeah. Especially in terms of designs, it's been very...
It's like your catalog.
It's like my catalog, and I have also noticed, it's funny that, whatever I start posting, I get more orders for that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I think it kind of triggers a memory in people. Yeah, oh yeah, I forgot about this. I've seen the post now. Yeah, let me order this.
It nudges them to buy it because when it's inside it, you're more likely to buy it, right? And what would you say is your biggest strength?
So I think my biggest strength is also my biggest weakness. I think my biggest strength is that I'm a perfectionist, and I think my eye for detail, being a perfectionist, my eye for detail and being a perfectionist makes me want to, up my game every time, makes me want to make my cakes taste better. There's so many times I have changed my recipes. I had a really good chocolate cake recipe, but I've changed it over the years. My frostings, I play around to make it better. And also in terms of decor, because I'm like, this color, ye mere wala pink. So this pink has to match this pink, and this green has to match that. And I'm pretty OCD about that. But at the same time, I think the same habit has kind of set me back and not let me grow, because I just want to make it so perfect that I can't do so many things beyond a point. And I think I have to kind of let go of that perfection, because I realize I may see what every petal looks like. The client, people don't care. It's not an art piece. You're not hanging it in your house. So that realization has come to me very late. That yes, I have to let go of that, and I have to be stop being a little so hard on myself.
Right, because a little imperfections will be fine.
Not a little imperfections, but nobody's as OCD as me, so it's okay. People don't care that much.
Nobody will notice as much as you.
Yeah.
And then could you tell us about your employees and how you train them to maintain your standard of perfection, because you don't hire previously trained staff?
Yeah, I think another thing that I learned from my internships was that all the hotel management graduates or everyone who has done these courses, they come with a particular mindset, and that's not the way that I do things. My way may be a little unconventional for them. And so it's literally, if I hire someone, I would have to make them unlearn all of that and relearn my way, which is a 2-step process. So it's better for me to hire someone raw, someone fresh, someone who's intelligent and ready to pick up and learn it my way.
Right.
So I always like employing women. I work most with 99% women, even in terms of my social media or anything. I tend to work only with women. I just tell them, just know basic English, just your 10th pass, 12th pass, anything. And if they have the will, if they've been cooking at home, they pick it up fast. Some people don't, some people do. I think I've been very blessed in that aspect. Of course, there's a turnover, people get married, people leave, but that's natural, that's okay.
Right. So COVID also was a significant and pivotal time for your business. So how did you cope with COVID?
So I am, again, like I mentioned, I'm extremely OCD about cleanliness, about washing my hands, about health. So COVID, I became another level OCD. So there was no way that I was going to kind of run my kitchen at that time. I think also you want to they are ready to come to work, but I am not calling them because I don't feel it's safe. So it's not fair for me to not pay them, right? So I wanted to have that thing to do something wherein I'm able to pay all of my staff. So I think there was a lot of cooking. Luckily, like cooking was such a huge thing, your dalgona coffee, your banana bread and all of that. So I took online classes on Zoom. And again, if you love, it wasn't just about baking. I love cooking and I love baking. So I did a baking workshop, I did a small bread workshop, but there was a demand because personally I love baking. So I did a kombucha workshop as well.
Okay, right. In this dynamic industry where we're constantly seeing new things come up, how do you manage to keep updated?
So I think your mom put it very nicely, that I focus on the 2 I's, which is ingredients and innovation. So we use, I don't think most of the clients are even aware of the different kinds of chocolates that exist, that there is a compound chocolate, which is not with genuine cocoa butter. There's a couverture chocolate, which is with cocoa butter. But I think everyone is intelligent enough to taste the difference, right? Or when you use canned purees or you use pre-made stuff, and when you do everything from scratch, when you get frozen fruit, when you get frozen fruit from abroad, or you use fresh fruit, the taste is very obvious. So I think ingredients is a huge part for us, to use genuine cream cheese, to use genuine chocolate, and not use commercial stuff which would bring down the cost but not taste as good. And innovation, of course, with social media, all of us are bombarded with what is happening around the world. It is so easy to keep up. Even if you're not traveling, sitting at home, you can know what's happening. There's just this fine balance between what is a new product which is doing very well, which is a trending product, because trends also come and go, right? But at the same time, which caters to a wide audience. For example, a lot of older people still don't like chocolate. So though my menu is very chocolate driven, but what do I do so that everyone is catered to, but yet it is a new product? Because everyone wants something new all the time.
Right. And have you ever thought about retailing?
I initially, in fact, I think this is one of my best Sweet Life memories. That when I started, I had a kiosk in Western Mall, and I still remember it was 25th December, and I think we set up the kiosk at 10 o'clock, and by 11:30 we were sold out. And I still remember the sale figure. This is 2010. This was 25,000 rupees in 1.5 hours. And everyone asked me, why didn't you make more stuff? Because I was like, that's what I thought would kind of sell the whole day. But for me, for someone who makes products from scratch, which have a very short shelf life, a kiosk only makes sense in winters, because in the Indian summer, you literally have to dump everything at night. I also had a kiosk in Silver Mark Mall or Pavilion Mall, but only around Christmas time, because we do everything very fresh and in small quantities, and it doesn't make sense for me to go into a retail space.
Okay. And as a lot of people in business do have problems maintaining a work-life balance, I think that is something that everybody faces a challenge with. So have you faced a challenge with that?
I think any woman who is a mother and who is running a business would relate to this. There's always a balance. I think all women say we're not doing it right. All women suffer from imposter syndrome at some point. It was especially challenging for me. Like I told you, my business took off in such a big way. I never expected that to happen. And in 2012, I mean, it had just been a year of tears, and it was going in such a great way. I got pregnant, and I had a tough pregnancy where I was put on bed rest. I was expecting twins. So I obviously had a lot of pressure from my family to shut it down, because I can't do anything. And that time I used to do everything myself. So I had to shut it down for a bit, and I thought 6 months, when my babies are 6 months old, I'm going to be back at it, because I was so driven. But I started after, I think, 4 or 5 years. So I had a 4 or 5 year break where I started a week after they started school. So I restarted Sweet Life that time.
And was it the same afterwards?
If anything, this is something that I don't even talk about anywhere. Like I've never mentioned on my page. I had no confidence left. I had zero confidence. I thought, I went to culinary school in 2009, and now probably whatever I know is outdated. There are people out there doing such fancy cakes. I didn't know how to decorate cakes that time. I only knew how to bake. And I thought, there's no market for me. And I had to in fact, my mother pushed me a lot. Start. What are you doing? Like, why are you procrastinating? You have to start. And gradually, I think that's when initially started doing decorated cakes, because I didn't know how to decorate. But initially, I think, so you never know something which the biggest takeaway sometimes now I tell myself is, what was my biggest fear? That I don't know how to make decorated, like fancy cakes. That has become my biggest strength. So I would really tell everyone that you never know how things just turn around.
Right. And another question I wanted to ask you is that if you could go back in time and meet Garima at 29, when she first started the Sweet Life, what would you tell her to do differently?
I think, yes, sometimes I like the fact that I started small, and it's okay if you start small, but I would tell her to be more confident. I would tell her, do it in a bigger way. I would tell her that as long as you love doing what you do, you will be good at it, and if you're good at it, you will be successful. So I would tell myself to think bigger, to be more ambitious, and not keep my sights so low.
Okay, and dream big.
Yes.
And also, this is a standard question that I ask in all of my interviews up till now. I haven't had many, but still I want to keep doing this. But what is the advice you would give to your own twin girls, or to anybody on the other end of the screen who's watching this video, wondering what they can do to fulfill their dreams, even when they feel that they don't have it in them to do so?
Okay, this is a really nice question. So if I were to give my daughters or anyone else out there advice, of course, like I've mentioned all this time, love what you do, be passionate about what you're doing, all of that. Yes, that is extremely important, because that's the only way you're going to enjoy your work.
Right.
But the mistakes that I have made as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, is not seeing the whole picture. Like I just focused on my product. But then there's so many other aspects, like your money management, your time management, your marketing, which are equally important. Yes, initially you can start small. You can you just get up and do something. You don't have to go very big. But from the onset, you have to look at your business as a whole. Yes, focus on the product, but see other aspects as well. So my time management, my money management, all of that is something that I'm still learning and trying to improve and be better at. So yeah, if I were to give people advice, yeah, just see the bigger picture and see everything as a whole.
Right. So thank you so much for answering all of my questions, and I'm pretty sure that everybody who's watched this interview, no matter what age they are at, they have all gained something from you.
I hope so.
And I also think that your journey as a mother, as a baker, and as a woman, it's just also inspiring, and it also gives me hope that I can do anything. That if I love something, I should be thinking about doing that and not what I think I should do, but what I love to do. And if I love what I do, I'll be successful at it, like you said. So could you please teach us a recipe now? Because we live in a health conscious generation, and I especially also want to satisfy my sweet tooth. So we would love for you to share a recipe with us.
Okay, we'll do a really quick ice cream, which you can put together and have it in your freezer all the time. And anytime you're craving something sweet, of course.
And I'm pretty sure my mom will be so happy if I've learned this and I make it for her.
Okay. So this is such an easy recipe. All you do is literally throw in bananas, jaggery, and coconut milk in a bowl.
Right, and the measurements for this recipe can also be found in the description below.
Mix them up. So basically you cook it, you give the coconut milk a boil,
Right.
like a good 5 minutes or so till the bananas are completely cooked. Right now they're seeming like a bit undercooked. So boil it nicely. So because we don't want the taste of raw,
Right.
kacha banana, we want them to be cooked through, and that's when they get like a creamy taste. Okay, switch off the gas, half teaspoon of vanilla, some sea salt, because salt helps the sweet pop out more. And basically if you add some alcohol to ice cream, it makes it less icy. So if you want, you can add a teaspoon of rum. The flavor goes very well, but if you want to omit it, that's okay too. Once we puree this, we're going to taste it, and if we feel that it's a bit too sweet, we're going to add a little bit of lemon juice. But right now we're just going to wait for this to cool down slightly and then puree it in the mixie.
Right.
So now we've churned all the mixture. So why don't you taste it and see?
Yes.
Do you think it's fine? Do you think it's too sweet? I think maybe
I think it could use a little bit of that.
yeah. So we'll just add lemon juice according to taste. If you feel it's too sweet, a few drops, that should do the trick. Mix it up. Then we will cover this and freeze it. If you have an ice cream maker, you can churn it when it's cold. If you don't, once it's a little icy, give it a whisk.
Right.
That's it, freeze it, and you're good to go.
How much time does it take?
Depends on your fridge. It will take good 12 to 15 hours.
Right. And you churn it once it's a little bit icy.
Yeah, if you have an ice cream maker, you churn it once a little bit icy. Otherwise, you can use a whisk to break up the ice crystals, just to make it a little less crystally. But otherwise, it tastes fab as is also.
Yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I hope you enjoy it.
Yes, a lot. Thank you.